Thank you so much, Mengci.
No problem.
So let me try to share my screen. Okay. Let me start my presentation with sharing with you that 70% of the population in the world will end up living in the city by 2050. So, but the problem is cities have been the source of unhappiness, especially at capital cities and larger cities. So the main argument of this research is that designing for urban happiness through humans narrative can offer a context-sensitive and human-centered approach to urban design. So today, me, Omar, is going to share with you some of the stories that I got from my fieldwork and my research so far, and briefly to just show you around what have I gathered from my data collection. Before that, I would like to introduce you to the types of happiness that I'm trying to cover in my research. So there are two types of happiness. The first one on the left side is the hedonic happiness, which is also known as the short-term happiness. So it is called short-term happiness because it doesn't stay with you for a long time. It is a momentary experience, and you can experience it instantaneously, but at the same time, it will go away sooner or later. It doesn't stay with you in a long run. So some of the ways of researchers have been trying to measure this short-term happiness is through life satisfaction and also positive affect. So in terms of positive affect, it relates to whether you have experienced more positive emotions or positive effects, such as it being interested, excited, strong, being proud, and those positive emotions are more than the negative emotions. And this short-term happiness are more related to pleasure. On the other hand, the second type of happiness is the long-term happiness, which is also known as eudaimonic. And this type of happiness is related to what Aristotle says about having a sense of purpose. So in contrast with pleasure, which is the short-term happiness, long-term happiness might not give you pleasure, but it gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you some contentment and fulfillment. You may not feel good at first, but in the long run, you will feel better about yourself, and it stays longer in your life. So to measure long-term happiness, psychologists have come up with the social well-being measures and also the psychological well-being measures. So some of the aspects of these two different social well-being and psychological well-being is related to you having personal growth and having purpose in life. You can control the environment around you, and you have positive relations with people around you, and you can accept who you are, and you feel the freedom and autonomy to do things. So these are the two types of happiness that I'm trying to explore in my research. And secondly, let's look at the approaches that researchers have been using in studying urban happiness. So on the green box there, I've written methods used in urban happiness research to measure happiness. So this is when we are talking about the experience itself, the happiness experience itself. And this is related to the first slide just now, the types of happiness that I talked about. And if you can see here, most of them are related to the short-term happiness. people have been measuring life satisfaction or overall happiness. It's all about how people experience things, and it is being measured quantitatively. And the common approach is to look at these methods of measuring happiness and try to find a correlation, statistical correlation with quality of place. So it's all about how humans feel whether they are happy or not, and also at the same time look at the place where they live or where they stay or where they go. So that is the quality of place. So in terms of the quality of place, researchers have been studying or measuring quality of place in terms of the objective measures and also subjective measures. And those two things are also related to quantification or statistics, or not just a statistic, it's about measuring how much, for example, in the objective measures, how much access do people have to urban spaces, or how the density, how that density relates to people's happiness, whether high density makes people happier or low density makes people happier. And some other things are like the city size, the frequency of socializing, and so on. And the next way of measuring to find the correlation between happiness is also in terms of rating people's perceptions towards place, whether they are satisfied. So also this way, people are also putting numbers on the level of satisfaction towards place. And lastly, there's the subjective measures. And this is more a qualitative way, where researchers have been interviewing practitioners, for example, to draw happy scenes and asking reasons behind their subjective ratings. For example, they ask people to rate their level of satisfaction and gives reasons. And from these analysis, I can see that they're still lacking in the descriptive ways of the reason behind what makes people happy and the deeper understanding of the experience itself. So what I'm trying to avoid through this research is to avoid what Kita said here, that the same recipes of health and happiness do not apply everywhere. So that's why in my research, I'm going through this exploration through people's narratives to ask the people themselves as those who experience happiness in their neighborhood. So what I did is I used phenomenology as my line, the main line of inquiry is to bring the stories to life. So it involves double reflection. So the first reflection happens in the first stage, which the walking interviews take place. So I would ask I've asked my participants to show me around their happy places in the neighborhood. So while walking through the happy places, they show me those happy places, and we can feel and there's the embodiment and immersion in the environment, and that's where the environment acts as prompts to bring the happy experience reflective and bring it to consciousness. So, and after a while, in a week or two, I will ask them to meet me again in the second part of the reflection, which is through elicitation workshop. So this elicitation workshop is different, where the first one is very dynamic and because it involves walking, it is on site, but this one is more relaxed and static, and where I brought in some maps and photos of the sites and to reflect back on the journey that we took to the happy places, and through that we can delve in deeper through those experiences and memories that they have in the happy places. So what I found out from all of these methods, the two methods, for your information, I did 4 case studies. So based on all 4 case studies, there are common themes that emerge. At the bottom there, as you can see, I tried to find what are the spatial, morphological, and social cultural factors that influence people's happy experience at all of the case studies. So all of the case studies that I've selected are located in one of the happiest cities in Malaysia. And these neighborhoods have different spatial morphology and social cultural characteristics, so that it has different combination, especially, for example, case study 1 and 2 are both mono-ethnic neighborhoods. But the difference is the first case study is an ethnic majority, and the second case study is an ethnic minority. And they are also different in terms of look. The first case study has a more traditional look, but the second case study has a more postmodernist look. But in terms of culture, the second case study has a strong and still preserve and practice their traditional culture. So the spatial morphology themes, the factors that I've identified through all of the 4 case studies, it involves openness of the environment and abundance of open space, and also urban convenience. Not just urban convenience, but at the same time, they also value rural characters. And lastly, having nature at their doorstep. And in terms of the social cultural factors, there is a strong sense of life that people are attracted, that makes people happy, and also where everyone is welcome, the diversity of people are welcome, and also to a place that people can fulfill their needs, role, and purpose. And for these 2 mono-ethnic neighborhoods, a strong sense of togetherness, that is what people value, and the convenience of living together with the same ethnicity, the same people that share the same value, the same religious practice, and the same culture as you, and even language. The ease of communication is what is valued by the participants in these 2 mono-ethnic neighborhoods. So let me show you some of the examples. So the first case study is located along a river. So SL from this urban village, it is an urban village. So he said here, although we live in a city, our lives revolve around the kampong. A kampong is a village. And when we played hide and seek, we would hide around the whole kampong from the 1st to the 4th street. So from the whole kampong means the whole neighborhood is being used because of the openness, because this kampong, this village lacks physical boundary. Houses are not attached to each other like terrace house. It is detached, it is not attached, it is separated, and it has a very high permeability, and this allows, and this is part of my participants' childhood memories where they can play around the whole kampong, and that what makes him happy. And the second one, this is a happy place. This bridge, right over there, over the bridge there, a small structure. The bridge is historical. It's just that it's been transformed into a modern bridge with Malay crafts. It was a place where youngsters built courage, confidence, because this is the place where they dive into the river, and this is where they learn how to swim. So it is related to the long-term happiness that I talked about, where I can sense that there is a sense of personal growth. And the second case study, which is an ethnic minority neighborhood, it is located by the sea, and it is a fisherman village, but with a more postmodernist look. So what the participant JH talk about the piece that he felt through the open view, because right now the neighborhood is being threatened by a very tall building obstructing the view. So this is what they are concerned about. They are very worried that this view that they have of the openness of the sea will be obstructed. And another one by he, other than my home, of course, being a Catholic, it is different. Church is where I meet all my friends. It's the congregation and of course a place of peace. So right here we can see that how, you know, living with the same people and you are able to practice, and also it is part of the sense of identity, where people feel a sense of acceptance and having positive relations by meeting friends, and also give you a sense of peace. And in the third case study, so these are the other two case studies. The third case study is the city center. It has a combination of postmodernist and also historical traditional buildings with commercial and institutional land use here. So right here, MR said that I would say hi to people, starting with some eye contact. Interactions give me peace of mind, happiness, indeed happiness. So for MR, being able to interact with people is a source of happiness. And this is not just being experienced by MR, and this interaction of welcoming everyone is seen throughout all the 4 case studies as well. And AS, also from this case study, the third case study, she said that if there is no historical building, I feel bored. I feel boring. I mean, like lifeless. So if you get to know all these new things, will give you knowledge. New things means all the historical things, how they lived in the past. In the modern times, we have to be grateful. So when we have these buildings, we are brought back to how they lived in the past. So it makes people reflect on what from the past and in the present, and that's also relate to personal growth and having a purpose in life. And at the last case study, this is a commercial street with a lot of institutions, a lot of facilities, government offices, a lot of services being offered by governments, a lot of banks and universities and so on. Here, it is, so the case studies are, the happy places are usually those things that makes people feel easy to fulfill their daily life, to carry out their daily life. But for just an interesting thing that is related to openness that I mentioned earlier, it is mentioned by L. L said that it's clear you can see the sky. I can see that above the building. Whenever the building was like that, it means a low building, I can see above the building. If it's taller, then it's a bit hard to see because I like to involve myself in the environment. So I like to see the sky. I like to see the road, the river, the forest. So whenever it's close by tall building, I feel, what day is this? I can't see the sky. So I feel my day will be gone, just like that. I feel very bad on that day. So if I can see the sky, it will be a very good morning. So that's how I think it is also quite apparent in all case studies that the theme openness can be seen throughout the case studies. So with that, I would like to conclude the 3 main things that I've covered in my presentation just now. So that my research is trying to explore both the short-term and long-term happiness, which wasn't the focus of the current researchers. And I approach it through phenomenology, through double reflection in 2 stages of walking interview and elicitation interview. And what I found out is the deep narratives explaining happy experiences and also factors beyond the quantitative approaches that have been done so far. Thank you so much. I really appreciate if you have any comments and questions regarding my research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mimi.
Okay.
Please feel free to text your questions about this presentation in the chat box, or just unmute yourself and ask at the end. Okay, now we're moving to the next presentation, which is from Tiisetso Mofokeng. She's a lecturer at the Vega School, Cape Town, and a PhD candidate at the Stellenbosch University. Her research and work focus on architecture, urban planning, urban design, and gender studies. And she will be presenting her recent research work for today that investigates the safety of public spaces from a gender-sensitive perspective in Niagara. Okay, so you're ready, Tiisetso. I can see your screen. Are you ready? Oh, now I cannot.
Yes, I'm ready. Sorry. I just need
No, it's
to
okay.
share that.
Sure.
I'm just gonna keep my camera off just for bandwidth so I can doesn't lag. Cool. Hello everyone. My name is Tiisetso Mofokeng, and today I will be presenting my research as part fulfillment of the degree of Masters in City and Regional Planning that I completed in 2022. The topic of my study is an investigation into the safety of Nyanga's public spaces from a gender-sensitive perspective. Just to share a bit about myself, I am an interior design lecturer at Vega School in Cape Town. I obtained my architecture degree from the Tshwane University of Technology and my urban planning honors and master's degree from the University of Cape Town. I am currently enrolled as a PhD candidate at Stellenbosch University, and I'm also the co-lead of a project called Girls Make the City, which I get to share about later in my presentation. To start with I will start with the introduction just to provide some context of the site that I worked on. Then the theoretical framework will follow, the research methods and techniques will be presented thereafter, and finally the research findings, recommendations, and where I am today because of this research. This research stems from my experience as a woman in planning, and particularly a Black woman in planning. Therefore, my approach to this study focused on gender planning through a Black feminist planner's lens. In many contexts of the Global South, women are generally viewed as subordinate to men, and this is especially apparent in the contemporary leadership and decision-making roles, which tends to be roles reserved for men. Thus, from this, it has been found that through research that planning in the Global South has and is still failing for the most part to enable gender-sensitive outcomes in public spaces, which now brings me to the problem under studying. Nyanga is one of the oldest Black townships situated at the edge of the Western Cape Province in South Africa and in the center of the Cape Town metropolitan area. Within this township, I have identified 3 crime hotspot public spaces which are unsafe for women. These are the 3 crime hotspot spaces, which then leads to the aim of the study being to explore how and why Nyanga's public spaces are failing to enable gender-sensitive safety outcomes, and the main research question asking how and why are Nyanga's public spaces failing to enable gender-sensitive safety outcomes. Now, because of the complex nature of the topic under study, a theoretical framework was established that explicitly allowed for a rigorous analysis of the research findings. To this end, I engaged in a review of gender planning through a Black feminist planner's lens, women's fear and urban safety, and the role of public spaces literature. And this review allowed me to establish subsidiary research questions and the assessment criteria. It is worth noting that the literature reviewed informed some of the recommendations that were made. In order to answer the main and subsidiary research questions, I made use of the following methods and techniques. Case study research method, which aided me in an in-depth investigation of women's safety in public spaces with a focus on Nyanga as the case study area. The advantage of using this method is that it relies on multiple sources that in turn produce deeper insights and meaning of the entity under study. However, limitations of this method are that they do not easily allow for one to generalize, nor do they represent anything other than themselves. Ethnographic research method focuses on the study of groups of people in the context they live. The method was suitable for advancing my understanding of what makes a group tick. The advantage of this method is that it allowed me to work with women and get an insight into their everyday experiences of safety in public spaces. The limitations of the method are the same as the case study. I then used face-to-face interviews, which included a grassroots group, namely the People's Environmental Planning Organization and the women local residents from Nyanga. I made use of semi-structured interviews that allowed for spontaneous comments and reflections. Field observations aided in the documentation of people's body language and vernacular languages within the public spaces, and mapping aided in the identification and description of the existing conditions of the 3 public spaces under study. The last technique I used was social media and Instagram question poll. I created a question poll that lasted for 24 hours to get a sense of what safety in public spaces means to women and the general public. This technique allowed me to engage and connect with the general public without meeting face-to-face, and it also provided me with a new window into people's experiences and their interpretation of what safety means in public spaces. This research involved factors that warranted ethical considerations, and so to this end, I embraced an ethical, respectful approach to this research study. These are all the research participants who were involved: myself, the researcher, 5 local residents as the interviewees, and 1 NGO interviewee. This is a list of the research findings. However, I will only be focusing on the 3 highlighted findings, but I'm happy to elaborate on other findings during the Q&A session. Recommendations to this study were also informed by precedent studies that focused on the concepts of safe city, convenient city, and a city of distinctive public spaces in order to promote gender-sensitive safety outcomes in public spaces. Public facilities in Nyanga were found to being poorly maintained, and residents complained that they would have to walk far to a public bathroom. It was found that public bathrooms and their surrounding area are not well lit, and therefore women avoid using these facilities. Recommendations for public facilities are that the facilities and urban environment should be kept clean. There should be a provision for the maintenance of the facilities and a provision for a 24-hour patrolling system around such areas to ensure safety and security at all times of the day. The placement of public bathrooms should also be near transport and retail nodes to ensure convenience and accessibility within walking distance. Actors who would need to be involved to ensure that these recommendations are fulfilled would be the local residents to help keep the facilities in good quality and the urban environment clean, NGOs to work with community members and the private sector to speed up the process of service delivery and provision of public spaces at frequent intervals, and the local government to ensure that public spaces are budgeted for and funding is provided for maintenance and security. Street furniture in Nyanga is not well maintained and often obstructed by trees, thus not used. Signage in Nyanga is also not visible and also either vandalized or obstructed by trees, which makes women uncomfortable in navigating through these public spaces. Recommendations for street furniture and signage include involving women in spatial planning and design processes, rethinking and redesigning the placement of street furniture and signage to encourage active edges or spaces and maintaining the quality of street furniture and signage in order to promote safety. Actors who would need to be involved to ensure that these recommendations are fulfilled would be local residents to provide crucial local knowledge about the quality of street furniture and signage, academics to study the existing challenges in public spaces and suggest possible resolutions with the help of local residents in order to promote co-production of spatial outcomes, built environment professionals to design, develop, and implement adequate street furniture and signage to promote safety, and the local government and private sector to fund, regulate, and maintain the quality of public spaces so that all members of the community, particularly women, can occupy and navigate such spaces without any fear. Urban vulnerability in Nyanga is an issue. Open spaces are often used for illegal dumping. They are not well lit and access points are not visible, which often leads to women not visiting such spaces. Local residents also complain that there are no parks to take kids to play and that parks are unsafe and not clean. Thus, recommendations to address urban vulnerability is to involve women in spatial planning and design processes, provision for adequate public infrastructure to promote safety, plan and redesign public spaces that reduce crime in under-maintained open spaces on roads and pedestrian paths, encourage community involvement, and lastly, encourage the linkage of public spaces and the connectedness of the urban environment. Actors who would need to be involved would be local residents and NGOs to promote community involvement, local government to ensure that crucial knowledge, especially of women's knowledge, is incorporated in spatial plans and policies, and the private sector to foster ongoing collaboration with the government and to identify opportunities for implementation and long-term investment. Other recommendations were provided by Instagram participants, which are CCTV footage that works, emergency public phones, and women-only public spaces, instilling trust in the community so that women feel safe to share public spaces and people they don't know. Also, secured economic mobility within a public space is vital for women empowerment. Recommendations were then used to come up with a spatial planning design resolution on plan. So this would be on plan, and you can also see it on 3D, just the look and feel of what would need to happen. And there's some couple of reflections before we go into the project that I'm working on. I realized through this research that placemaking is actually a human need and process that every member of the community should be involved in. I also realized that it is important for more gender perspective approaches to be applied in public spaces, and that spatial planning and design recommendations should be workshopped in townships like Nyanga. So where are we now? Girls Make the City is a project that I'm part of. It's a utopian project executed under the custodianship of Open Design Africa and in collaboration with utopian partners in Cape Town. So here we focus on the 3 superpowers, which is the power of us, the power of place, and the power of doing. So this is the team, myself, and 4 other amazing social entrepreneurs that are working on this project. So why Girls Make the City? Our whole goal is to guide young women and girls to initiate and create safe and vibrant public spaces where girls and women can feel happy, thrive, and be celebrated. So here we chose another Black township, which is Langa. It's closer to the city than other townships in Cape Town. And we chose this particular site because we felt that it was appropriate. They had in 2022 rallied for GBV, freedom from GBV, gender-based violence, and we had a lot of partnerships with the NGOs within this community. So we had a workshop, and some of the activity questions during the process workshop we had with the stakeholders, 3 NGOs, Project Playground, Just Grace, and Love Life, where we gave them a map to identify this using sticky notes, the public spaces they are most familiar with. And then we asked them who uses the space, how often do they use the space, do girls use the space, what is the potential of those public spaces, and what's hindering stuff from happening in those public spaces. And then the process leading up to the workshops with the girls is that we had a meeting with the City of Cape Town, a representative from the City of Cape Town, and we had exchange students who were visiting Cape Town. So we asked them about their perception and ideas of what they had been told about this site, this township. And then we went on and met again on the 20th of April, where we had a second meet up with the Fontie students as well as the Langa GBV group. And we just wanted to hear from the Langa gender violence group, what are the complaints that the residents are complaining about, and what are they getting, and what are the police doing about this. And then on the 18th of May, 2023, we went on a mini tour to one of the NGOs that we're working with. And then on the 15th of June, we had a Langa stakeholders workshop at Gugastebe. It's a community center that we used as a venue. On the 27th of July, we had a check-in meeting with the stakeholders, like I said, the 3 NGOs that we had selected, and we asked them to help us select some of the goals that we would have on this project. And we gave them a criteria that had to be in between the ages of 16 to 25, and they had to be in those particular 3 NGOs or at least be associated with them. Then on the 26th of October, we had to wait for one of our team members who doesn't live in South Africa. So she came on, I think, the 24th of October. And then we had a final preparation team meeting with Live Brand, which was the team that would document our whole process with the workshop with the girls. Then one of the learners or girls that was part of the workshops leading up to the workshops we had with the girls was very excited and gave a mini testimonial about what she looked forward to and what this project would do for the girls in Langa. And then on the morning of the 28th of October, we had our first workshop. So it was more about understanding the project and the place of the Monowisi Center, which is based in Langa. And then workshop 2, seeing the potential of place. Workshop 3, interventions with potential and the potential of that place, the interventions and the roles. And then on the 9th of November, we had an info moment with another group of the Fontie students where we briefed them a bit. Luckily, this time it was just girls, so it aligned well with our whole memorandum and agenda for the girls' workshops. And then on the 12th of November, we had a 4th workshop where we took them to one of the iconic museums in South Africa, which is the Tiisetso, and we had some of the representatives from that place provide us with the space where the girls would workshop some of the interventions they came up with. And then this year, we started with the implementation with the girls. We've had 2 meetups with the girls so far. And these are just the images from the processes from the 13th all the way to the workshops we had with the girls. This was the walkabout. And then we had the afternoon session. This is the group, our team members. And then the meeting with the girls, and when we went to the Tiisetso Museum. And then we, at the end, gave them certificates after the 4 workshops, just to say that, you know what, we acknowledge the girls and that they are change makers, and we'll go into the next phase, which we are busy with at the moment. These are just the key activities that we had put in a project outline. Started with the research. We did our own research, project development, onboarding of the girls, and we had a regenerative design workshops. Girls develop interventions, execution of interventions which we're busy with now. And up until now, we've documented some of the the process that we've worked on. So if you can go on Open Design Africa website or Utopia website, you'll see some of the pictures and of the process we've been through up until now. And yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiisetso. Okay, so based on the agenda, we're going to have a quick break. But then you know that we're a little bit running out of time, so let's just have like a 1 or 2 minutes rest, and then, well, at the same time, maybe Renelle, you can check if you can share the screen successfully, just in case. And then we will be starting at 5 past.
Hi, thank you, Mengci. Tiisetso, you need to unshare for me to be able to share.
That fine?
Yeah, I think Renelle, you can try now. Yeah, I can see it.
In the meantime, I'd like to say that my sincere apologies for the misunderstanding. Apparently, we have a duplicated link. I mean, a few minutes ago, I resent an email from the SJP account to just anyone who couldn't join at the beginning can have the right link now. So, well, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Alejandro. And also, we can share the recording on the website. So even that they missed something, they will be able to catch up. Okay, I'm very sorry for the short break, but now it's 5 past. So Renelle, are you ready? Good.
Thank you, and hello everyone, and thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world at the moment. My colleagues have talked about gender, we talked about happiness. I am here to talk a bit about technology and what technology has to do with public spaces. I'm going to try to edit myself as I talk, and I know that in the interest of time. So I'll talk maybe about the most interesting things, but feel free to ask me any questions at the discussion at the end. So my name is Renelle Sarjeant. I am the founder of Public Space Global. Essentially, Public Space Global is an NGO. Our role, we work primarily in the Caribbean, is to champion better and greener and friendlier urban development in the region. So I'm presenting today the case study of Connected Arima. It's a project that's actually in its very early stages. But I'm going to talk a bit about how that process of creating a smart city under the umbrella of the Connected Arima project is unfolding. To do that, I'll talk a bit about smart cities and public spaces and give some definitions about what those things mean. I'll give the context for ICT in Trinidad and Tobago, which is where Arima is located. I'll talk a bit about the Connected Arima project, how it is currently being designed and how, as I said, how it is currently evolving. But I will also talk a bit about the local needs within the Arima area, things that people on the ground have told us, and kind of come up with a definition for what a smart city means in the context of Arima, and then talk a bit at the end about some of the lessons that we're already learning so far from this project. If you look at a smart city, you think about a smart city, sometimes people have these sorts of images in their head that typically smart cities are rooted in some sort of technological utopian vision for creating or recreating our spaces. At the very core, smart cities are essentially an attempt to apply technology to the urban environment. But the application really is supposed to solve a particular challenge, whether it's around sustainability, crime and security, citizen engagement. And if you're looking at the screen and reading, you're seeing examples of how smart cities have been or are being implemented in many different parts of the world. Of course, this is not a very complete list, but you can see the broad range of applications of technology within public spaces and within cities already. In Colombia, they're using it for security, implementing CCTV cameras, but also developing a responder network who are monitoring those cameras and able to respond to events. In the Netherlands, you're thinking about safety and security in a slightly different way. So in addition to typical target hardening things like putting up bars, installing CCTV, they are trying to think about safety and security through some softer measures, behavior change. For instance, using lighting to guide people's behavior or guide where people are walking at the nighttime, which is, I think, is a very interesting example for us to look at. The Dominican Republic is the first place in the Caribbean where smart city is being thought of. They're still in the implementation stages as well, but they are looking at a real estate development and implementing energy efficiency or energy efficient living within that new city that they are building. Air quality monitors, smart ticketing, there are many mobility applications in smart city projects. We're also seeing lots of projects around engaging people, creating platforms for people to comment on government projects, for instance, or to be able to find information about projects. And in Portland, Oregon, it's a really nice example of one that is currently being done. And in that project, they have taken the approach of centering inclusion. So they're looking at how technology serves the most marginalized. But looking at what a smart public space is, you can think that a smart public space is just an extension of a smart city, but at the end, maybe we'll see that it's actually a bit more. But similarly, there are many cities and projects and public spaces where smart things are being implemented. For instance, energy generating exercise equipment, and that is being used to charge your cell phone within the public space. Apps that can tell you whether the parking is full. Climate smart sensors within public spaces. These are just some of the applications of smart city technology within public spaces. To focus now on Trinidad and Tobago, I'll go very quickly on this. What we have noticed in the country is that the COVID-19 pandemic has really pushed the digital agenda to the forefront. There are lots of new strategies regionally being developed by the Caribbean Community CARICOM, but also locally, there's a national digital strategy. In fact, a new government ministry was formed to lead that process of digital transformation. And I think the country has seen that because there's already a high rate of digital penetration, this Smart City Arima project is seeing as a new layer, a new way in which technology is being incorporated, not just through government services, but really to serve the broader public. And we see that the urban agenda and the ICT agenda is being merged in very specific ways here, focusing on the redevelopment of the downtown Arima area, and looking at issues of crime, quality of life, urban governance, and also within the context of local governance reform. This is also happening. So Connected Arima is a project that is being spearheaded by the government. The Member of Parliament is a champion for it, but it's actually being at the moment funded by the Inter-American Bank through loan funding and also through technical cooperation assistance. Arima is a relatively small town. The population is about 33,000 people, but it also is suffering from decline a bit. Businesses are closing frequently. There's a declining number of small and medium enterprises. It's becoming known as a crime capital within the country. But there are also many positive things about Arima that this project can potentially build upon. It's a transport node for places along the East-West corridor, which is an urban conurbation in the country. And it has many unique characteristics. It's the home of the First Peoples. It's the home of a local musical art form we call parang. It has many public spaces and groups of public spaces and sporting facilities in its downtown area. It's also the first royal chartered borough within the country. So it has a lot of history and heritage behind it. Now, as the process is evolving, it would have started with a public perception survey to kind of figure out what is needed within the downtown area. That survey was used to decide what are the particular spaces for intervention, and the decision was made to focus on the downtown area and specifically a group of public spaces called the Princess Royal Park. But it also identified what were some of the key issues that I think over 3,000 persons identified with the downtown area. And a lot of the things that I've talked about previously are some of the same things that people said need to be addressed to redevelop and revitalize this town center. Now, that public perception survey, along with a series of consultations with business and the First Peoples community, was used to develop the terms of reference for conducting 3 smart city assessments. One focus on digital connectivity, one focus on mobility, and another a socioeconomic focus, which took a very participatory approach, talking to people on the street, conducting focus groups with key stakeholders, ensuring that issues of inclusion and specific groups such as the LGBTQ community were included in the process of figuring out what has to happen in the downtown Arima area. Specifically, how is technology being thought of in this context? There are already some proposals for how technology is being infused within the downtown area or should be implemented, and how the technological infrastructure will be improved. And that is being overlaid by some of the issues that people have identified or are identifying that also need to be fixed with the built environment. So there's an improved broadband network within the area. There are poles that are going to be used as multifunctional poles, not just for the typical electricity wires, but also for CCTV cameras. There's a potential for implementing early warning systems as well on those poles. A CCTV network is coming within the downtown area, and there's a command center to be monitored by the police. But they're also thinking about what are the digital services that can be provided to people. Free public Wi-Fi is one service that is already being implemented in particular areas. If you log into that free public Wi-Fi, you then sent to a new municipal website that will be developed, which is supposed to allow you to access particular municipal services. That is also tied to a new ICT center that has been built and recently opened in the downtown area. That ICT center is intended to give people access to the internet. It also has a role in terms of digital literacy training and also allowing people to complete digital applications for a whole host of government services that are already online. And the intention is also to go towards digital services for businesses. First, the accounting systems, creating customer registers, working with them to develop online purchasing systems, doing analytics of their customer base. All of those digital services to business are supposed to help be part of the revitalization of the downtown. And I will just very quickly tell you about some of the findings with some of the interviews and focus groups that we've had with people so far. People have rightly said that the area is good, but it needs to be better. And they have also been defining what technology in a smart city is supposed to mean to them. They are very happy about free Wi-Fi spots, but they are very clear there are spaces that when we need those Wi-Fi spots, for instance, at transport hubs. There are lots of Venezuelan migrants in the country, and they have said because they have to send money and they aren't able because of the regulations to access a cell phone plan in the country. They need Wi-Fi when they're sending money back home. So where there are Western Union centers and where there are banks, for instance, those should be areas where you have Wi-Fi hotspots. People want to be able to book a public space to have an event or to do some sort of sporting activity very easily. Right now, it's very difficult. And not just access to Wi-Fi, but people are also saying we need to charge our phones. Typically, if you want to do that, you go into a fast food restaurant. But there's also a very strong sense of nostalgia in addition to technology. the smart city should be addressing or be building upon the cultural heritage. And there are lots of interesting things that used to happen, some no longer happen, some are still happening, that should be celebrated within public spaces. So in addition to the technological installations, the issue of representing and reflecting and providing spaces for culture in the public space and in the public realm is very important. And as I begin to wrap up, if we were to take a very critical examination of smart cities within this context, firstly, clearly smart cities are a practice-oriented field. Of course, there's lots of literature with hundreds of case studies of smart cities, but really these are practices that are developing on the ground as they interact with the local conditions and local needs, at least ideally. But in ARIMA, there are already several questions which are emerging, and these are not questions I'm going to attempt now. But what is the role of local government? If you have a multilateral agency like the IDB and central government leading the process, where does local government fit? Is multilateral funding and loans, how sustainable are those things? How, in the end, how are you going to evaluate whether these projects are successful and these investments are successful? Yes, technology is being implemented, but there's a greater role for data and for measurement as well in the process. How the process of citizen engagement is also very important. People feel quite removed from urban governance processes. So how can this project and how can technology be used to inform that process of engagement and continuous engagement with the population in the ARIMA area? If we were to develop a smart urban agenda for Trinidad and Tobago, even for the broader Caribbean, there are many things to consider. I'm not going to go through all of these in details. We can probably discuss it during the discussion. But one, who defines what is a smart city? And a smart city, of course, is not just the technology. The human aspects of the smart city, how do you tease those out in the process and evolution of these projects? There's a broad scope for technology, so ensuring that you try to use different technologies that can help you do different things, but particularly using some of the data that is being collected to understand public spaces a bit better is another thing that we should be thinking of in the region. We should approach smart cities as a process rather than an endpoint. And in that process, you build that coalition of stakeholders. And one thing that's very important, and I do need to touch on, is that what is the business model of the smart city? Yes, you have funding that's short term, but there are wider issues around the urban market that need to be fixed. There are problems around access to foreign exchange and rental costs. Those are the real things that businesses are feeling. So there's also a need to address the issue of urban markets and the business model of the city alongside some of these technological interventions. And I know I'm over time, so I'm going to wrap up here. Just to say that not just because it's a case study, I think this case study can also contribute to the literature, although it's in the process of being developed. Smart cities and SIDS. I think governance and funding are two very key things that need to be considered. And is a smart public space just an extension of the smart city? Or is there something tangible around dealing with a specific physical space that we need to look at? For instance, when you are designing public spaces and putting technology in those spaces, there are certain affordances that you need to design for. Someone who's using Wi-Fi probably needs to sit, they'll probably need shelter, they probably need shade. Those are some of the things that you think about when you're creating these new spatio-technical spaces. And the last two things, the role of informality. There's lots of informality in the city. We can't ignore it. We can't design out of it. It has to be part of the process. And we also need to be thinking continuously on how we're evaluating that that we're doing when we're developing the smart city. So thank you so very much. Of course, I'm happy to take questions during the discussion.
Thank you very much, Renelle, for the insightful presentation, as well as, trying to bring up a lot of points for further critical thinking. Another a little bit thing about Renelle Sarjeant, which might be very helpful for future research exchange, is she's also a consultant at the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and leader of Public Space Global, as what has been said in her presentation. And she has been awarded a master research degree in interdisciplinary urban design at GCL. and her work has been focusing on the potential and principles, generally speaking, directing the ICT solutions for improving people's experiences in public space. Okay, and then the last presentation is gonna from Alejandro. So Alejandro is an urban geographer who has been awarded a master's degree in development and urbanization, and he has been a consultant for urban and environmental studies and performed as a planning professional in Chile since 2013. He's currently a PhD candidate at the Bartlett School of Planning at UCL, and his research explores the public space governance in the neoliberal cities, focusing on Santiago de Chile as a case study. For today's presentation, he will share a part of his doctoral research finding, focusing on the identification of networks of actors after protests happening in 2019 and the subsequent changes in governance. Okay, Alejandro, can I handle it to you?
Thank you, Monks.
No
Yes.
problem.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. If you allow me, I'm gonna speed up at the beginning, just to recover some time. So yes, this is my initial findings on my PhD research. So I'll be showing some of the main outcomes I'm getting from my analysis. So yes, let's start now. So public space governance in the neoliberal city. Yeah. So that's as a bit of a context. Santiago is basically the capital of Chile. It's a place in South America, and it's commonly known as a classic example of what a neoliberal city is in a neoliberal country in general. It's the same economic model through the whole territory, and it's very classic. I don't think I'm gonna put more time here to explain the reasons why I'm calling the city a neoliberal city, but basically the whole model based on the Chicago economics after the dictatorship of Pinochet and the subsequent changes in the economic model and the political functions in the country. So this I was going to explain this in detail, but it's basically we can more or less recognize the classic turn from the developmental model, Keynesian idealistic planned model of growth until the coup d'etat in 1973. Then the rollback of neoliberalism come, basically cutting all the public infrastructure and enterprises and privatizing most of the job of the state. And then from the 90s on, we experienced the rollout, which is basically what Harvey and others have defined as the construction of a new institutional framework for the neoliberal policies to engage globally with the local economy and the metropolitan spaces. But then we have in Chile the 2019 incident, which is basically something like this. This is as says down there is the 25th of November 2019. More than 1.5 million people on the street in what we now call the uprising or the outburst, the social outburst. I'm using the word uprising from now on because it's more related to the language we're using today. But so what happened is basically massive protests, which started from the capital and spread to the whole country, claiming for changes in the system. It was a wide spectrum of demands. We can't really classify them as a lefty project. It was more or less like a social social uprising in general, claiming different things, reclaiming some spaces from political expression, but also changes in the constitution and other important public debate. And I'm relating that with some things related to public space, which is basically the relationship with those demands, these political demands, with the spatial inequalities. and the uneven development that characterize neoliberal cities, particularly in public space. So I'm using these images here because we in Chile have a lot of different indicators, indexes, officials from the private sector, from universities and other actors that constantly publishing these indexes trying to show the differences in cities related with inequalities in income, but also in environmental conditions. So we can see here differences in the surface temperature, which is basically directly related with the quality of public spaces and the distribution of green areas. So it's a clear, if you can see this, it's a clear greener portion of the city that it relates with more trees basically, and the rest is basically like being in the desert. It's like more than 40 degrees. So it's almost 20 degrees different in the same day, which is basically related with that. But it also relates with income. So this is a very old map from 92 and 2002, and it shows the distribution of income. So basically, the higher the income, if you relate with these previous maps, the better is the quality of public space. And this is another map of the city showing that, like how the social vulnerability concentrates in the left. Black spots are the poorer, basically. And then you see in the left one the environmental quality, and it's the same thing: higher and lower, higher, higher and lower. So it's basically there's something happening here. And my research is inspired by this question: why? Why is happening? And it's not fixed, even though we have from decades this constant maps showing the with the official data that we have a problem here in space in spatial quality. So a bit of a context in the governance system here. Basically, we have a presidential system with a Congress. It's a republic, three powers of the state, and the regional metropolitan government, and then the local mayors or local councils. And you see the city here is divided in a lot of different territories, each of them with an authority, a local authority. And apart from that, since 2021, we have a change in the governance at the regional level, which now moved through to this model here with an elected government for the regional government, and it's independent now. Which before 2021, it was kind of designated by the president. So it was a government led by this person, and it was on his team all the ministries at the regional level. So it was kind of the local authority for the ministries. But now we have an elected government for every region, each of the 16 regions. But the authority for the ministry, the local ministry, remains in the central government. So this is one issue that I'm exploring right now, but it's not the main subject of this presentation. So going back to this division of different councils administrating the public space in the city, if you allow me to show you this is a network showing just the funding relationships between some actors, the main actors working in the city. So it's very complex. These green squares here are the local governments. So we have a lot of local governments influencing the urban development in the city. This is a funding relations network just for public spaces. So as you see, it all comes mainly for the national government, and it is spread by different institutions, different actors through the urban space by the municipalities, but also some private actors involved in it. If I want to simplify this, let's imagine that there will be only one local government here, which is basically, I'm reducing the quantity just for a better explanation. So the size of these squares shows the eigenvector, which is basically the centrality of the system, the centrality of the actors within the system. So the bigger, the more influent are the actors in the outcome. So as you can see here, it's interesting that the local governments still they are the most influent actors for public space in the city, but they're followed by basically private actors, mostly consultant, and receive ultimately the fundings to design and make a place shaping. What is happening with these differences I showed you previously? I'm finding now that it's a problem of maintenance. The different budgets that the municipalities have to address these issues, they have a massive gap, and you can see here within two different municipalities how different is this is in Chilean pesos, of course, but you can imagine the difference, right? So I'm sorry. So this is my question. Why this is happening? Why, if we have the same city, why some places have less money to be managed than others? And especially in contrast with private managed public spaces, which is a feature of the most neoliberal cities. So this is what I'm exploring, and I'm based in a couple of authors, but I would like to focus now on Stokely, who says that the world of governance is changing. We are seeing more different actors beyond the state involved in these networks and managing and creating new public spaces. So does this mean that we are going to a different model of governance? Well, yes and no. There's something new happening, but at the same time, in these cities in particular, from decades now, we have seen these endeavors involving public actors and the private sector working together for profit, of course, but at the same time using public space to fix capital in cities and promote the reproduction of the investments. So in a way, it's not something new, but we are also now seeing other actors taking the lead in this partnership, not necessarily from the big firms and international capitals. So going back to the uprising, this is the ground zero. Most actors refer to this place like that because it was, of course, where the protests started. But these places suffer a lot of vandalism and riots, and are still recovering today from that. So let's for this presentation, I'm focusing on this triangle here. So if you see that all the people just extend to the end of the street, this is the main avenue in the city, and it's basically this map here shows the same triangle there, right? So I'm focusing on this area at the beginning of my research, and it's a heritage neighborhood. You can see some pictures from it there, and it's literally the center of the city, of the capital. So one actor that I found working here is this building, which is basically a public space which belongs to the state, but is managed by a private company. It's a non-profit corporation, really, but somehow they managed to profit from it to maintain their activities. It's a cultural center, but it's given by the Ministry of Culture to this private corporation for its management, and it connects with the heritage, the old neighborhood, through this very beautiful small streets, when we can find other private actors working in public spaces. What is interesting about this case is that it's not only about management and security. They have a special contract with the state, which kind of push them to respect and make the public rules be respected in their space. So they have, for example, these signs in the cafes and other spaces, the restaurants there. They control the prices because the state asks them to have like social prices of the product, but they also have security staff and they close by night. So it's something to be to remember. This is the one of the testimonies that the manager gave me, and they say if you contrast with the surroundings, this center wasn't subject of vandalism, and they think it's because of the meaning. This building was found by Salvador Allende, like during his government for a meeting with the UN, and then it was recovered like 30 years after that, and now it's a cultural center. So somehow people relate with this space politically, and it didn't suffer the same damages that the surrounding area. But then after the operation, the COVID came, and the whole city center was abandoned. So one of the problems that these spaces are experiencing now is just the degradation and the rise the rise of crime. For example, something like this, like there are very old buildings, they are protected, but some laws related with the heritage buildings, but we're still having these issues now. Some actors told me like they are not related with political expressions right now. It's more like just graffiti and tag-like painting. And so I found these other actors working together here from the neighborhood. Some of them are from the neighborhood associations, and they work together with the local merchants, and they found this they founded this grassroots organization which basically aims to recover all the facades of the neighborhood. This is a problem that they didn't have before the pandemic and the uprising, and they are worried about the safety and the implications on the tourist activities there, because it's one of the main attractions of the city, this neighborhood. So I talked to the leader of this organization, and he sent me this video, for example, and you can see the neighborhoods and local merchants and shopkeepers working together, funding the painting and the brushes. And they started with 1 or 2 buildings at the beginning, and at some point they managed to reach the local government and the regional, the metropolitan government, to express this intention to keep working with the neighborhoods and at the same time creating and enriching the social fabric. So it's a lot of actors that started to work together. You can see it in this network now. And this guy in the white shirt was the founder of this initiative. And he told me like one day he was painting by himself with some neighborhood, and this other guy here appears and asks him, well, why are you doing this? He said, and he explained all the things that I already said. And when he knew about it, he introduced us as the metropolitan government, which is this person here. And since that moment, they are working together, and the regional government is actually paying for the paint and the brushes now. But the labor is still going on, carried on by the neighborhoods, by the neighbors. Okay, so reaching the end, it's this is one of the initial findings of my research, and it's interesting that out of the political expression that happened in 2019, we are seeing the emergence of new groups and somehow a new feeling that in the grassroots organizations about reclaiming the means of production of space, basically reclaiming the right to the city, and they have more like leverage now. They think that they can actually influence the political decisions, and it's evolving in have more control about their own spaces, which is something good, of course. But what I'm also seeing now is that they are evolving into a more control organizations, not only related with cleaning, but they also show me like how they install CCTVs, and those CCTVs. This picture is from the local government. They have a system. Sorry, they have a system of vigilance and surveillance there. But the same actors, the same organizations participating in the painting, they are now putting their own cameras, and they are carrying some citizen detentions, which is basically they caught their own by themselves, the criminals and the people who make this graffiti, and they take into the police by force. So I think it's all justified for a safety crisis in the whole country. They pointed out that it's related with immigration, with a crisis in the urban order, and the limited capacity of the police. So to show this, I have this testimony about the president of one of the neighborhood association who was beaten up by some of these people making this graffiti in the attempt to stop them from destroying the facades. So he says like, well, we are the good ones, and we don't want the bad ones to win. But then again, is it part of the governance of this new governance movement to take control physically of the space too? Is it not contradictory with the publicness and the values of public space? And I talked to the police too, and they say like, well, neighborhoods can't do much. They got beaten up, and it's partially they told me like there's no enough capacity in the police to confront these offenders, because they're not criminals in the same sense that other crimes are happening in the city. So they have to prioritize resources. So to end with a bit of a reflection here, yes, we are going to a new governance of public space, but as many authors have pointed out, and some of them I completely agree, that we can't really give complete control of the private managers to public spaces, because we are putting the publicness, what make a public space public, in risk. We should, under the same premise, to pay attention to this new emergence of self-organized groups, which they have all the rights to claim the right to the city, basically take back the means of production of urban space. But we need somehow bring the government back in order to secure the publicness and avoid the emergence of violence between citizens. So this is more or less my initial conclusion, but it's just the first chapter of my PhD. So I would be very happy to have feedback from the audience now. And yes, that's more or less my presentation. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. So now what I'm going to do is to stop recording.